Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, who the ball.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBC. Dr. Cavil at the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Charles Bishop is out on assignment, but we got Mike back in the house, and we have A.D. Drew. Welcome to episode 374, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KSOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Fame, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. I know y'all know these scores, but I want to see what these gentlemen think about these matchups. I got a chance to get out with Charles and Mike yesterday. So we watched in the lab, or we were on the road in the lab, or we were just having a little fun, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. Anyway, Mike did his thing, I'll put it that way. But we watched the Texas Southern Fairleigh Dickinson game. 84-61 was the final. Obviously, the thing that stood out to me was Texas Southern going 0 for the 3 until their last shot of the game, basically, to put a dent in that where they went 1 for 17. Tough night. Hard to beat a team if you're going 1 for 17, particularly if the other team shoots 11 or 27 in terms of the 3. So Texas Southern was 5.9% from the 3, just to give you some percentage of how bad they were. And Fairleigh Dickinson was over 41%. We'll come back to that, but let me give you some other updates. Alcorn State played North Texas. Challenging at least for the first half, and they kind of got away from it as they lost 69-53 in terms of that matchup. You had the matchup today in regards to the 16 versus 1 with Howard University taking on Kansas. They were in a good fight most of the half. Second half, it gets away from them as they fall 96-68 in terms of those matchups. We have some WNIT games that are going on now, particularly into the night, where you have Morgan State holding their own right now against Wake Forest, 37-33 as they are into the third quarter. So a 4-point game there is something we'll kind of keep our eyes on throughout the game and give you some updates of what that looks like. And then you have Jackson State in their matchup coming up later as well. But those are some of the outcomes we saw yesterday. I'm going to start with you, Mike. Get your thoughts, particularly on the Texas Southern Fairleigh Dickinson game, because I know you saw that. What stood out to you in that matchup? And then we'll follow up and see what A.D. Drew's thoughts on that one or any other matchup that he wants to talk about.
Well, it was kind of tough. It got to a point to where it was tough to watch. Because you saw TSU fight to within 10 and just too many mistakes, 1 for 13 from the free throw. From the 3-point land. Yeah, you can't beat any team doing that. Rebounds, I think that rebounding game did not help TSU as well. But at the end of the day, the shots were just plain icicle cold. And the Tigers just could not get it going. So they had a healthy effort. I think they even got it to within 10 and 11 on 2 different occasions, if memory serves me. But again, Fairleigh just pulled off on them. And it was difficult to watch at times because TSU is a better shooting team, at least from 3-point land, than they demonstrated last night.
Yeah, when you talk about that at the 10:04 mark in the second half, it was 54-44, and I said, all right, we got to match up and get it done. And it went the opposite way in regards to that. And I thought maybe they could claw their way in there. Had a couple of empty possessions that really allowed Fairleigh Dickinson to take over the game late and just pull it away. So great point when you talk about it getting down to 10 and you're like, hey, here we got something. No, not so fast. Eddie Drew, what did you think about this matchup in terms of just the scoring? In addition, a little bit of the Alcorn North Texas game, I should say.
Yeah, I've spent more time watching the Alcorn North Texas game. I was kind of doing a triple role last night, co-hosting the ONG Strike Zone with Brian.
Nice.
and Kelvin, was also producing, and still had the Alcorn North Texas game on the iPad. And ironically, I had the score you failed to mention, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get to it. Southern Women also lost their first four matchup yesterday, 57-47 to Sacred Heart. So Chivalry's not dead. I definitely mentioned the ladies out there. So, Dr. Cavil, I'm going to be honest with you. When you get to this time of the season in Division I basketball, be it men or be it women, my goal as a fan is to see one of our team make it to the weekend. Thus far, we 0 for the week. So far. Right now, Morgan State is being competitive in their game. We've got Jackson State in WNIT tonight, and I believe that's it. I believe we banking on the shoulders of the ladies, because if my memory serves me correct, all the men's teams that were in a postseason tournament have lost. That's Division I, Division II, and NAIA. Or now gone with Tougaloo losing on, was it Wednesday afternoon, I believe that was. So it's up to the ladies. Why not, Doc? The ladies have carried us our whole life. So it's up to the ladies to carry our basketball fandom for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, oftentimes that is appropriate. So ladies for pushing us forward and seeing if they can get us into the proverbial weekend part of AD's request. On Tuesday, we got a chance to talk about, as you said, the fact that there were some teams out there in the HBCU landscape that had great seasons, winning seasons, particularly on the men's and women's side, that did not get postseason invite. We talked about the fact that obviously we understand that the NCAA is pretty much the automatic bid for most programs. Even, I had a stat on there that I put out for some folks in regards to what it looks like. With 23 of the 32, or 71.9% of the NCAA D1 men's basketball automatic bids in this scenario go to those programs. So 6 leagues received a combined 41 bids, because there were 2 other conferences that received 2 bids. So the 27 automatic bids, most of them went to the 6 other leagues. But with that being said, you have the NIT. On the women's side, on the WNIT, you get the first and second team that get automatic bids. On the men's side, it's just the first. So with that being the case, Alcorn State Braves, as we know by now, did not win the tournament. Texas Southern beat them, and the number 2 seed co-champions Grambling State, which is a program that went 24-9 and did not get a postseason invite. Bad enough, right, on the SWAC side, but on the MEAC side, you had similarly happen with Howard being able to do the double-double. We gave you an update of what happened to them today in terms of the tough loss they had to Kansas. But you had North Carolina Central that was in second place in the conference. They finished at 18-2, went into the semifinals of the MEAC. You had Norfolk State Spartans that have won the last 2 years. Obviously, this year they finished third in the conference. They made it to the finals with a 22-11 record. And you had Maryland Eastern Shore, 18-13 in terms of what they did, finishing tied for third in the conference. And not to be outdone, you had Tennessee State that finished 18-14, tied for second, three-way tie for third place, I should say, in the OVC. These programs did not get a postseason invite, not to the NIT, nor the CBI.
Yep.
And so one of the questions I had for Charles in that scenario, is it time for HBCU postseason tournament? So I'm going to start with you, AD Drew. What are your thoughts on that? And as you said, before you answer that, chivalry's not dead. When we talk about on the women's side, we had some women teams that had great seasons that are not having postseason play as well. Obviously, on that side, you had an Alabama State program that finished 16-15, no postseason, get it done, and even at least a 15-15 in terms of Prairie View, at least without a losing season. But even more so on the MEAC side, you had teams that played really well that did not get postseason bids, with Howard Bison going 16-14 in terms of their record. And then you had independent program, North Carolina A&T, that finished at 12-6 in the conference rate, 18-12 overall. So even on that side, you have the ability with some teams that had winning records that could extend their season, rewarding for such great records. But a couple of programs, as we talked about on the men's side, with Grambling, Norfolk State, that had 20-plus win seasons and are at the home, or sitting at home. AD Drew, what are your thoughts on this? Is the time now the right time?
The time is – no, the time's not now, Dr. Cavil. The time was yesterday, last week, and last year. And you're talking about on the division – you talk about on the Division I level. Doc, can I please take this one step further and break this down on the small school level, on the mid-major level, as we like to call it around here?
That would be great.
Let's go to the Division II level. Let's start off with the men. Let's start off with Claflin. Claflin's, well, I've got the women's page pulled up. Let's start off with the women. Fayetteville State, 18-7. Lincoln, PA, 19-9. Lincoln, PA, and Fayetteville State won their respective divisions in the CIAA. We all know how ultra competitive the CIAA is. So, we definitely need to talk about that. Now, and when you go over to the men's side, you had a 19-win Claflin team sitting at home. That's probably the only other team in the CIAA, men or women, that had a valid argument. But you know my favorite conference when it comes to Division II, Dr. Cavil, that's the SIAC.
The SIAC.
The SIAC. Were it not for the eligibility question with Benedict definitely deserved a look. 18-9 on the season. Eastern Division champions of the SIAC. Morehouse, 17-9. But 3 of those 9 came against Division I programs.
Yep.
So 17-6, Dr. Cavil. When it comes to the Division II, Division II record.
Nice.
Switching over to the women. I've been on it. They talk about me because I went to Tuskegee and I've been riding Miles. But Miles women, were it not for Tuskegee, would have been the representative out of the SIAC, 18-7. Yes, they lost to Tuskegee. They got swept by Tuskegee. Lost 3 to Tuskegee.
Yep.
18-7, Dr. Cavil. 3 of those are to Tuskegee.
With 3 of those losses to Tuskegee.
3 of those losses to Tuskegee. So 18-4 against the rest of the competition. The rest, now going down to the NAIA, I think got the right teams into the tournament, both men and women.
Right.
But they decided to screw us with our seeding. The Memorial goes through the conference, the Sun Conference, with one loss. They lose their opening game, win the next 18 in a row in the conference. And you reward them with a 14 seed? Are you serious?
Wow. Ridiculous.
Russ gets a 9. Tougaloo, who had not lost to a NAIA program, Dr. Cavil, is only good enough to get another 6 seed. They had one loss on the season. That was to a Division II.
Yep.
Langston was the only team that potentially did not get screwed with their seeding. And Langston has a very good argument on why they should have been on the number 1 line instead of the number 2 line. Yep. But you may be splitting hairs with that. Philander Smith, 2 of their 3 losses were to Russ, and they won 14 seed. And how do you reward Xavier from winning the Red River Conference tournament? You make them get on the plane and go to frickin' Idaho. How many black folk in Idaho, Dr. Cavil?
Only you
let me rephrase it. How many black folk who not in the military in Idaho? Because the only reason you're gonna be in Idaho probably is if you're in the military, my brother.
Or you playing football.
or you on a
scholarship
playing football. So yes, it's beyond time. I sent Dr. Cavil some information about something or a committee that I am on that is trying to solve this problem. I wish I could say for Dr. Cavil on this platform. But to protect myself and the other committee members, I cannot say more except for this. It's coming. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. As early as 2024 in a destination city during this time of the year, Dr. Cavil.
Yep.
Let those who go to the tournament who deserve to go. Let the rest of us play for pride, have some fun, create an atmosphere. I've been long-winded. I'm sorry, Dr. Cavil, but you touched the subject for me.
Good stuff. So let me go to Mike before we go to this break. What are your thoughts in terms of, is it time for HBCU postseason event? Major division or mid-major division, maybe both.
I just pointed this man right here. What he just said. What he said. You know how you put the meme? What he said. What he said. I agree. I have more of an issue. Yeah, I have more of an issue right now. Well, let me back up. It's been time. Look at the seating. There is a virtual, obvious inequality in seating of HBCUs at all levels.
Bias.
Seriously, it's not even unconscious. It's conscious as all consciality can allow. That it is just blatant bias. And I think it's time to let those schools. You mean to tell me a Grambling, Tennessee State had a great season? You mean they can't get an invite? All of the schools from that AD drew. I mean, let's create a separate conference, and I don't know where we do it, how we do it, the who, what, when, why, nuts, bullets, whatever. But let's create. I think the time has already arrived, and I think it's time to put some pen to paper and make it and bring it to fruition.
Good stuff by both of you all. Shout out to some of the lab listeners. They can get in there and give me their thoughts again. And I wanted to get your thoughts because we discussed a little bit on Tuesday. Great dialogue going on. March Madness is obviously in full effect. Great comments from Silas Edward McMorris, G. Boom Holly, Ricky Burton's in the building, Chuck Hunt, Jazzy Faye, Belinda Johnson doing the thing, Thomas Einstein Maddox, Stephen Gates is in the building. Winston-Salem State nearly took out number 1 team on its home court. I saw that last second shot that gave them the lead against the number 1 team there. Edwin D. Moore, Ron Waters, as I said, appreciate y'all jumping in here and joining us. With that being said, we'll take our first break. We'll come back on the other side and give you the mid-major division top 5 programs from women's basketball in week 10 as we're starting to close up, which means it's time to turn the chapter, the ping of the bats. We'll give you a little update on softball. Got some major conference games as we start things in the SWAC with conference play. It should be interesting. Stick with us on the other side. We'll give you some of that to get into the baseball ping of the bats. As we close up on basketball, stick with us. We'll be right back after this first break.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
When you're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics, there's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Before we get into the mid-major division top 5 on the women's side, I did want to share a little more love with Jackson State and Memphis. Jackson State comes in at 21-9, Memphis at 20-10. This game will be on ESPN at 7 o'clock. It is the WNIT, that's the women NIT, and it's sold out. I thought that was a nice statement in regards to this matchup. It's sold out. So before we get in the top 5, Mike, any thoughts in terms of this matchup? Anything that you want to see Jackson State do to get it done, keep it close, ultimately push to get the victory?
Well, obviously you want them to push to get the victory, but you kind of want an end of the year statement from Jackson State. That upset by Southern, the last minute shot. You want them to emphatically bring some thunder to the competition. I think playing Memphis is a good matchup. I'm not surprised, to be honest, that it's sold out. Jackson State brings a crowd. Memphis brings a crowd. I'm happy that it's sold out. It'll be the closest almost equivalent to maybe two, maybe a full HBCU and a half a HBCU school playing each other. Because if you look at Memphis and you look at their structure and you look at the composition of their student body and some of their teams, but I'm kind of excited about that matchup. And I think Jackson State's got a chip on his shoulder. I think they'll want to show that, hey, we are Jackson State. We probably should have been somewhere else. We let Southern, we let Southern in the game, and they stayed in the game. But I think Jackson State will have something to say about this game.
Eddie, Drew, your thoughts before we get in this top 5 on this matchup. Should be good.
I'm going to make a confession. When I was looking to go to college coming out of high school, then Memphis State was on my list of schools that I was seriously considering. It was probably the only non-HBCU that I was considering going to. So I've always had a little bit of an affinity for Memphis University, now then Memphis State, when I was coming out of school. And this I'm assuming this game is in Memphis, and
correct.
Yeah, yep. I mean, we already know what they do with the Southern Heritage Classic, so this is the best thing that Jackson State folk don't get.
Exactly.
In Memphis for the Southern Heritage Classic now, because they're not going back to Memphis no time soon for football, at least. So all the Jackson State fans, this is the only time to see the blue and white, blue, red, and white. But Jackson State is probably one of the few HBCUs, not the only HBCU, who has the physical specimens that can match up with a Division I. They have the front line, which is where a lot of our HBCUs lack when they go up against those high D1 programs. Jackson State does not have that problem. Jackson State, most of our HBCUs have small guards. Jackson State does not have small guards. So they have the ability not only to match up and beat Memphis, but to make a deep run in the WNIT. But I've got a question for y'all before we get to the polls, Dr. Cavil. Hey, anybody tell me where the women's Final Four is played at for the WNIT? We know the men is at MSG. I've never paid attention long enough to see where the women's Final Four is played at. Can anybody please tell me?
Yes, a good question. I have to check that out in regards if it's a neutral site or if they play at the home site. Because obviously the men go to New York, which has been a pillar destination, and you just added the WNIT a couple of years ago, but hadn't had a chance to really hit on that in terms of watching that. With that being said, let me get into poll rankings before we get too far ahead of ourselves in terms of these teams that are coming in. Dropping out this week was West Virginia State, Yellow Jackets, sitting at 22-6, 17-5. Now, for those that are receiving some votes, were Fayetteville State, Broncos sitting at 18-7. Yeah, West Virginia State, Yellow Jackets that are also receiving votes at 22-6. And Lincoln, Pennsylvania Lions close out those receiving votes at 19-9. Let's get it into the top 5 programs, I should say, that are on the women's side. Moving in at number 5 is Elizabeth City State Vikings, sitting at 19-11, 14-2. 16 points as they remain at the 5 spot. In terms of the number 4 spot, we have none other than Philander Smith sitting at 22-5, 17-5, 37 points. They were not ranked, the Panthers there, so they jump in the top 5 as West Virginia falls out. Bringing us to number 3 on the list is none other than that Rush Bearcats, 22-5, 12-2, 43 points, 5 first-place votes. They jump up 2 spots as they get a run in the tournament, get a victory and a loss. So they did get to play multiple games in the ANI tournament. One of the few on the women's side that did that. Bringing us to number 2. At number 2, we go back to Florida Memorial Lions, 24-5, 15-1, 51 points. They move up 2 spots from the 4 spots. These 2 of the programs that you heard Drew talk about in regards to the type of season you had, and you see it proven out in terms of the rankings. Number 1 should not surprise you. They've been here holding it down for a while. They got all first-place votes. Season ended at 22-3, 19-0, 60 points and 1 first place. At the first place ranking with 6 first-place votes. Got it done solidly there in terms of how they close out the season. losing in our tournament. Let me go to you, Mike, first in regards. What are your thoughts on the number 1 ranked Tuskegee Golden Tigers for week number 10? Final rankings will come up next week, but for now, week 10, Golden Tigers hold on to the number 1 spot.
No disagreement. Their season, they've had a tremendous season, Tuskegee. So it's no to me, it's no surprise that they got all first place votes. Philander and Russ you could kind of flip those, back and forth. You could go argue that one's 2, one's 3, or one's 3, one's 2. But I know you're gonna chuckle when I say this, Doc. But I have no problems with this particular poll on this day, on this week in the year our Lord 2023.
And I should say Tuskegee falls to 26-4 with that last loss in the NCAA Division II tournament.
Correct.
So just to correct that in terms of the rankings. With that being said, AD Drew, what are your thoughts on the top 5 programs?
Since Mike agreed, I cannot agree because that would make for a boring podcast. And we've got to have some dialogue here because we've got to make sure we fill up some time to get to our next break. So I am going to split hairs here, Dr. Cavil. Let's start off with your receiving votes. You've got West Virginia State only receiving 9 votes. Postseason team. Fayetteville Broncos receiving more votes, who's not a postseason team. Now, I can't argue with the top 5 because all 5 of your top 5 were postseason teams. So I can't see vaulting West Virginia State into the top 5 necessarily over those other deserving teams, but they should be at the top of the receiving votes as the only postseason team in that category. And yes, I'm still going to say it. Miles should be on that list somewhere. You need to add one to your list, Dr. Cavil. Got to say that. Now, as far as the top 5, the only qualm that I may have with the top 5 is I flip-flop Russ and Florida Memorial. Russ made it 1 round further than Florida Memorial in the NAIA tournament. Florida Memorial kind of laid an egg in Indiana in the tournament. Florida Memorial got blown out. Russ was competitive in both. They won one and was competitive in the second game in the tournament. So based on that, I would flip-flop 2 and 3. Other than that, Dr. Cavil, I mean, I'm splitting hairs with both of these arguments, Dr. Cavil, just for dialogue purposes.
I think you actually split hairs pretty well. I did like what you said there. It'll be interesting to see in the final poll how people check it out. Maybe after listening to you, do they take that in consideration? But I could actually see Rust over Florida Memorial in terms of how they performed in the playoffs, if you would, the tournament. But I think you could go either way with those conferences. I think obviously with their long win streak, kind of gave them the edge. And it's usually hard for a team to drop in those kind of situations, but things happen. To be interesting to see what that looks like. Intriguing, as you said, with those receiving votes. I think that was even more valid point that you made there with West Virginia maybe should have been ahead of Fayetteville State. I think a lot of that is just week-to-week polls. When you talk about a team loss and dropping with another team getting them. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, the final poll ranking regular season. So I think that was some very good notes in terms of splitting hairs. So I'll give you kudos for you doing your homework there. I won't take your mic. Usually, you disagree. Mike is smart. He decided he's going to cool it out a little bit. He wants to remain and make sure he get his talking points in because I'm sure he had some other things to say. So he's playing nice right now. But in regards to you providing clarity in regards to your points, I'm going to let you stick on and let you come back after this break. With that being said, we'll be right back after this second break. We'll come back with the men's side of the major division, break down and see what do we have up and see what these two gentlemen think about week number 10, mid-major division style for men's basketball poll ranking. Stick with us. Be right back after this break.
2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, AD Drew. Drew, if Jackson State women's, as a couple of posters put on here, they want to see Jackson State get it all, get it done. I think there was Edwin D. Moore says, I want JSU to win the NLT tournament. If that is going to be done, they will end up in Las Vegas.
Viva!
To answer your question, the Final Four, the semifinals and the final. Yeah, Viva Las Vegas. Men in New York, women in Las Vegas, as you said, many people would be like, I can do that. So Jackson State has a chance to end the season in all places. Las Vegas starting in Memphis. Great stuff. Let's get into the mid-major for the men's side of that. Shout out to Edwin D. Moore, making sure that he wanted to answer to A.D. Drew's questions of seeing where Jackson State would end the season if they cut down the nets for a champion WNIT. Las Vegas. And with that being said, let's look into the mid-major division for the men this week in week number 10. Couple of teams dropped out. Tough weekend on the men. Tuskegee Golden Tigers 20-8, 15-5. Philander Smith Panthers 22-7, 10-4. So receiving votes were those teams. Philander Smith ahead of Tuskegee. Be interesting to see what A.D. Drew thinks about that. Not just them dropping out, but where they drop out in receiving votes. You may have some concerns there too. 22-7, 10-4, 20-8, 15-5. But if he does, I'm sure he'll give a great rationalization for it as he is in class and make sure the lab listeners are taking their notes. Also receiving votes is Claflin Panthers, 19-6, 15-5. West Virginia State Yellow Jackets hang on to receiving votes at 20-8 in terms of what they look like. So let's get into the top five and see where things changed around this week in terms of those programs. At number 5, Virginia Union Panthers, 23-7, 12-4, 41 points. Were not ranked, but they jumped in the top 5 after having a tough CIAA tournament. They come back in the playoffs and make it to the second game in the tournament, winning the first game. So I think that gave them a little bit of edge as they had a run in that matchup. Winston-Salem State, you heard earlier, could not hold on the victory, upset. You would have had a rematch, would have been interesting. But at number 4, let's keep going. We have none other than the Miles Golden Bears, 23-6, 15-5. They were not ranked 53 points. Obviously did do very well in the Division II tournament, but they found a way to move into the top 5 in terms of just a significant season, 23-6, 15-5. At number 3, we continue to get and move up the top of the polls. We have Winston-Salem State Rams, 20-8, 9-7, 61 points. They move up 2 spots as they went to the buzzer and lost to the number 1 team on their court as they tied up the last part of the games. But the Cosby non-rebound gets put back in the basket, and they go down in the NCAA Division II men's tournament there. Bringing us to number 2 as we continue to move up the poll rankings. At number 2, we have none other than Langston Lions, 27-2, 20-2, 3 first place votes, 76 points as they remain number 2. AD and Drew had a great interview with the coach this past weekend as they went into their matchup. They lost a tough one on Wednesday to a team that seems to always be in the race for a championship over there in the NAIA program, which is part of the concern AD talked about in terms of seeding, but could not quite get it done against Georgetown of Kentucky. But you talking about a great season, a 30-plus win, a really 60-win turnaround when you had 30 losses moving into 30 wins. Crazy in terms of what they're able to do. But in some people's mind, people kind of question whether Langston should be number 1 and number 2. But if you take it about the depth of how far a team goes in the tournament, it looks like the poll rankings may have had it right in terms of what they did the previous week. But at number 1, you have none other than Tougaloo Bulldogs, 28-1, 14-0, as they add the second loss there in terms of when this poll comes out, getting to both of these teams getting the 30-plus wins as they go into the tournament and take those losses. But Tougaloo gets into the final 18 programs while Langston just gets to the Sweet 16. So interesting updates on some of those records, as I do want to make sure everybody knows they did get to 30 wins on both of those teams, and you add a loss in terms of them getting their first loss Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively, as you got the win on Tuesday, get to 8, but a loss by Tougaloo on Thursday. Tough loss as we watched everything go down with the Langston getting lost there. I'm going to start out with you this time, Drew, in terms of what are your thoughts in the top 5 on the men's program?
And you know, I like to take your full poll, including the receiving votes portion, which a lot of people overlook when they
I like that
when they go through these polls. The only thing I can say about the receiving votes portion, Dr. Cavil, I am mad that in the discussion that we had in segment 1, I failed to mention the West Virginia State Yellow Jackets as one of those teams that was left out by the Division II committee. And the fact that you put them on your poll, babe, it has upset me that I actually forgot to mention them. So that's on me, though. That's not on you. That was not on you. Thank you for putting West Virginia State out there. But that's what these polls are about. They're about conversation. And we just had a conversation. We mentioned a team that we normally wouldn't mention, probably. Now, for your top 5, Dr. Cavil, 1 and 2, hit it on the head. Now, here we go with the splitting hairs. I may have some re-ranking of 3, 4, and 5. You have the right teams there, but we may need to possibly look at shuffling them around. First of all,
what you got?
I dropped Miles from the 4 to the 5 slot, just based purely on the tournament game that they played. They were the only team that went in and was blown out. Let's be real. They lost the game by almost 40. All right, so that drops Miles down to 5, and the 2 teams receiving votes behind them. Your top 7 were all 7 of the postseason teams, so I have no argument with that. Now you get to Winston-Salem and Virginia Union for the 3 slot to 4 slot. Virginia Union made it further in the Division II tournament. Winston-Salem won the conference that Virginia Union is in. So which one do you value more? Depends on what day of the week it is and when you're voting and what was the last game you saw. And Virginia Union Virginia Union won. Winston-Salem lost a buzzer beat. Literally lost their buzzer beater. So, you split that. Which one of those do you put above the other? I don't know. I'm going to let Mike see if he can help me solve that part.
Quick question before I let Mike do this test question. Xavier Gold Rush. Any feelings about them being able to win the first game tonight and then lose the second one?
Well, maybe once again, you need to add that one extra team.
23-9.
Yeah, you need to add your one extra team into your poll, Dr. Cavil, possibly.
I knew I'd get you with the test question. Let me go.
Xavier should be up ahead of Claflin. I will say that. Xavier should be behind Tuskegee and Philander in the RV category.
I like that. Good stuff. Mike, what do you think about the poll rankings? Same test question to you. What are your thoughts on Xavier in terms of not possibly should be in some of these poll rankings, even maybe in the top 5? And if you do, who you push out?
Miles. I don't know if Miles should be in the top 5. And it has to do with the criteria. What is the criteria you're looking at? What data points are you looking? Are you looking at regular season and conference and any conference tournament, or are you looking at how they did the tournament? Miles got blown out. I don't think you get points for that. So I would move them in place of Xavier. I mean, but I switch. Put Xavier. If you're gonna put them anywhere, put them in number 5. You could argue that. I think Virginia Union should have been a little higher. Yes, they didn't go as far in play, but I think they had a stronger season. They had a stronger. I don't know if we look at statistics enough as well. And you could look up and get somebody. You could get an opponent that is more equally matched or closer in the play. So I think you should weight that unless they go deep into the tournament, I think you should weigh that with, get that less weight and look at the totality of their season. So that's why I say Miles should come out, put Xavier in there. Virginia Union should move up.
So who's 4 and who's 3, Mike? That's the question. Winston-Salem or Union?
Union, in my opinion.
Nice. Great dialogue. Great dialogue, gentlemen. Before we go to this last break, let me give a shout out to Brother Wendell Davis, Stephen Gaither, always showing us love. Appreciate him. He loves on those Thursdays when we get into the NIA and particular Division II. Just as much as you love the SIAC, we got Stephen Gaither that loves the CIAA, boy.
We're going to have to come on and do a battle one day, a conference battle.
Certainly. That's in the works of the plan to do that a little more often. HBCU Heritage Center, shout out to them in terms of what they continue to support. Great dialogue. Keep it going in the chat zone. With that being said, we'll take a late break, come back on the other side, and we'll talk a little bit poll rankings in terms of what Brian and they did on the softball. And then we'll give you some key matchups to think about in terms of baseball this weekend as they get the ping of the bats going in the conference play for the SWAC. Should be an interesting season. And we have a top 3 matchup, if you would, in one of the games this first weekend getting off the bat. Boy, you talking about starting on fire. We'll be right back after this last break. Stick with us, and we'll give you some more information about your HBCU sports on the other side.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN SportsWrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN SportsWrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
T. Madden & Associates is a sophisticated and experienced law firm located in your neighborhood. We're turning injury to cash.
T. Madden and Associates obtained almost $2 million for my injury. They turned my injury to cash.
Now, We can't guarantee how much your injury is worth, but we've recovered millions for our clients. Call T. Madden and Associates at 833-PAID-123. That's 833-PAID-123.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Great dialogue going on. Appreciate the lab listeners as they're giving it to us. Let's get into a little bit of softball. Brian and AD made sure Siri's not dead, as I like to say. They gave us a ranking for softball. As you know, they like to break it down with the NIA, Division II, and Division I programs. So let's see if we can pull that up and talk a little bit about that in regards to what that looks like on the softball side. They have Tennessee State as the top program right now in softball, with Alabama A&M right there behind them, sitting in that same area. Fascinating. Then you go down to the state of Florida, you got FAMU. I usually like to read this in descending order, so I'm not even taking my own lessons here, but just got excited seeing this Grambling State at 4 and Norfolk State at 5. So as we would say, at number 5, Norfolk State; at number 4, Grambling State; at number 3, Florida A&M; at number 2, Alabama A&M. The Ag schools got it going on. Number 1 is Tennessee State. So if you're talking about the SWAC, you have Grambling State out of the West, but you have 2 the East. You got a MEAC program in Norfolk State, and then you have an independent Tennessee State. Should be interesting to kind of see how this flow ebbs and flows throughout the season. Let's get into Division II. At number 5, Kentucky State, SIAC. At number 4, Miles out of the SIAC. Tuskegee out of the SIAC. I think we see a frame going on here. Yeah. Edward Waters. Guess what? They moved. So now
to the SIAC.
At number 1, Albany State not only is getting it done in the SIAC, as the entire SIAC doing it, but the number 1 overall.
Can we talk about bias here? Like,
CIAA could be CIAA in the hunt.
It could be that the SIAC is just as strong. You got to remember, in terms of CIAA, it'll be interesting to see what they do with softball. Unlike baseball, where they only have 2 teams that actually have a program in the conference. Right. Sometimes you see that weightiness from that. Let's go back and look at the NIA programs real quick. Make sure we get a little
one thing with Dr. Cavil, with softball, we went with the football route. We combined all the NAIA and Division II for softball and baseball, because
makes sense. Well, let me take it back. I believe maybe there is a little bit of biasness when it's all SIAC, but we'll see. We'll check out a little bit. Yes. Let's go to baseball on this side and look at the mix of what we refer to the mid-major division in regards to that. We'll start with the major division first. At number 5, you have, I guess we'll do mid-major. With number 5, we'll do Texas Southern. At number 4, Bethune-Cookman. At number 3, Alabama State. At number 2, North Carolina A&T State. And number 1, Jackson State. Fascinating, because this poll ranking is a computer algorithm, so it's based on the various measurables in terms of win records, rankings of the conference, various things in here that they put in there. Strength of schedule. So this is not just people voting. This is about algorithm telling you a frank in terms of strength. So let's get in there for the Division II.
I think the algorithm is off. There's no way Jackson said that's not. Something is wrong. That
Florida Memorial is number 5. Listen, Miles at number 4. At number 3, Savannah State. At number 2, Talladega. And number 1, Albany State. Number 1 in both men's and women's. So Albany State certainly is getting it done. That would correlate in some degree in terms of the Black College 9. I'll give you a little bit breakdown then, because I want to ask these gentlemen about some of the matchups this weekend in the SWAC in particular, as we get into it before we get too far along. We have a top 5 matchup with Bethune-Cookman facing up against a big-time matchup this week with Alabama State traveling to Daytona. Whether you're looking at some of the poll rankings and talking about the Black College Nine, this would be a top 3 matchup with number 2 Bethune-Cookman hosting number 3 Alabama State in terms of those rankings. So I'm fascinated to see what that goes on. We also have another top 10 matchup when you talk about, surprisingly for some, Alabama A&M and Jackson State. One thing that is different about the Black College Nines, at the beginning of the season, they essentially do the votings every 2 weeks. So this is as of 3/5/23. So a couple of things have happened since then. So take that as you consider this. But Alabama A&M has made a statement early in this season, particularly what they did over those first couple of weeks in those HBCU Classic, namely in the MLB Classic, in terms of what they're doing with the baseball program. As such, you have the number 4 team traveling to the number 1 team, Jackson State, in terms of the Black College poll. That's one of the polls that AD, Drew, Mike, myself all vote in, and why I wanted to kind of get it up there in terms of what that's like. Fascinating in terms of that matchup. So you got 2 in the SWAC that feature not just top 10, but top 5 matchups. Then as you get into it, you have all the other games. The other 4 games feature teams that are ranked. Prairie View, that started off the preseason as number 1, all on a hard time, but can they right the ship as they get into SWAC play? There are 10 this week, so you have a matchup with number 10 on the road at Alcorn State. It'll be interesting to see what will take place.
That's a get-right game.
I agree with
get-right series.
I agree with you. At the other one you have is Texas Southern, that is 5th in the Black College Nines, if you would. They're traveling Arkansas Pine Bluff. So you see what's taking place here so far. You got these ranked teams that are on the road in the first week in the SWAC. You see it again. FAMU ranked 6th in terms of Black College Nine. They're on the road to Mississippi Valley State. And you also have Southern, which is ranked number 7, and they travel to Grambling that started off in the top 10 rankings, but as of the voting for 3/5, they fell out. So you have Southern on the road to Grambling. Rivalry matchup to kick off things should be interesting anytime you get these 2 schools together. We just saw in basketball, whether it's in Utah or whether it's in Baton Rouge or up there in Grambling, it doesn't quite seem to matter. It tends to be an intriguing matchup. This one features number 7 on the road at Grambling. So you have all of your top seeds on the road this weekend. So a couple of things for you all to break down. Mike, what are your thoughts going into the baseball season this first weekend SWAC? A lot of things to think about. Where is your mind in terms of these matchups?
Well, first looking at the 2 matchups, you got the two top teams in batting. If you go on team slugging percentage, team batting average, and Jackson State and Alabama A&M. They're tops in the SWAC. The only other team that's in the 3 is TSU. Those are the only 3 teams with a 300% batting average or greater the last 2 weeks. Then you got the 2 top pitching teams going against each other in Alabama State and Bethune. So you're going to see the 2 top pitching teams playing each other and the 2 top batting teams batting each other. So that's what stands out to me, at least initially. Jackson State has been their top 3-4 batting team for the last 5 years. You can do the math. Alabama State has been the top pitching team up until recently. The only other ones that had subpar 3 ERAs, not North Carolina A&T, and Bethune. And Bethune has the best team ERA. So it's interesting if you start looking at the data and how these teams are performing. 2 top batting teams going against each other, and Jackson State and Alabama A&M, and the 2 best pitching teams right now to this point in Bethune and Alabama State. So those kind of stand out right now.
Man, great breakdown, terrific matchups. So you can see it either way you want it in terms of pitching matchups or hitting matchups. We'll see what plays off. AD, Drew, what direction you going with some of these matchups, these top seeds on the road, get right games, as you said, a couple of them, or you looking at these top matchups that feature these top 5 programs in the Black College 9 poll, some of the top programs in the strategic rankings that you all have as well. Which direction are you going?
You know, I gotta go off the beaten path, Dr. Cavil. It would be AD Drew if I stayed on script. But I do have a question. Alabama A&M has who this weekend and where?
Jackson State.
They're on the road to the #1 team, Jackson State.
Yeah.
Okay. Reason I asked that is, as everybody remembers last year, Alabama A&M was playing with essentially two arms tied behind their back, losing their home field at the beginning of April.
Yep.
And they were starting to make a little bit of a rumble. They weren't quite making noise last year. Now, this year, they came out making a little bit of noise. Question is, we know who the big four in the East are. Jackson State, you got Jackson State, Alabama State, and the two Florida schools.
Yeah.
And A&M, the Alabama version, make enough noise to bump one of those big four out on the east side of the tournament. That's what I want everybody to watch this year. And who will that be? Because I think Alabama A&M can make enough noise. The question is, who's going to be sitting at home? Do the Florida schools just go right down the road to the beach? Or is it Alabama State having to go down? It's going to be one of those two Florida schools. I hate to say it.
Yeah, it's gonna be right now. It's looking like Florida A&M.
Exactly. I have to ask that good question. But also, Dr. Cavil, now here's my off the beaten path. We forgot about our former MEAC brethren over there who are now HBCU independents. Just so I can give everybody a quick update. Delaware State, Norfolk State, all the teams lost in the weekend series. Delaware State, Norfolk State were able to take one game, whereas Coppin State and Maryland Eastern Shore were swept last weekend. So looking at this weekend schedule for our former MEAC schools, Coppin State is on the road to Merrimack. Merrimack is a team that is 2-9 overall, Dr. Cavil. Still be an opportunity for Norfolk to get some wins. They're 2-1 in the conference, but they're 2-9 overall. So that should be an opportunity for Norfolk to get some wins. Maryland Eastern Shore is on the road at LIU. LIU, 1-14. Opportunity to get some wins. Maybe these are get-right games in the NEC. Going on out. Delaware State hosts Central Connecticut. 5-3. 3-0 in conference. And finally, Norfolk State has a non-conference series against VMI, Virginia Military Institute.
Yeah.
And give me a second. I'll tell you exactly what their record is, since they're a non-conference. It's not on there. They are 10-8 overall. Now, the one thing that you notice about those northern schools, that they haven't played that many games. So keep that in mind. So it's hard to judge them right now because they don't have the games, whereas a lot of these SWAC schools are into their 20s now as far as total games played. Some of these teams haven't even made it to their teens yet, to their double digits. So, we're going to have to wait a little bit to judge those schools, which is why you don't see those teams in the Black College Sports Network ranking, and not a lot of them in the Black College Nines ranking.
Let me ask you this. If they did have it, here's another data point, or played 20, do you really think that they would supplant some of the schools that you have now in the Black College Nines poll? Do you really?
Well, I think maybe one team out of that group could sneak into possibly a top 5 spot.
Yep.
But as a collective, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with
that. I'd agree.
Great point, because you talked about the starting season. I think you had Norfolk State and Coppin in that top 10, but because of the records have fallen out, And the interesting, you talk about Merrimack, that's a Division II program that's reclassifying, moving up. We talked about in basketball, Fairleigh Dixon, they got the bid. They actually beat them in the tournament and twice over the season, but because they're not eligible to go to the tournament, Fairleigh Dixon's got that bid into that. Similar thing for baseball. So great point, fascinating. It's an opportunity to get the win. We'll see what that looks like and give you some updates next week. Great dialogue, great conversation. Get out there and support your HBCUs, baseball, particularly as it starts to warm up. You want to get outside, see some good baseball. Check it out. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from Inside the Lab in the College of HBCU Sports. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. I want to say thank you to A.D. Drew. As the professor jumping in here. Remember, he's been elevated from clinical professor, so he's full-time now in terms of his status as he's on the tenure track. We'll see if we make sure he gets his regular airtime. We don't want any trouble with the provost. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. That's DrKenyattacavil. Update, Wake Forest did down Morgan State 75-49. Those that haven't seen those scores, make sure you tune over and check out the women in Jackson State. They're down
6-0 early.
As early as they're down 6-2. Update 7:53. ESPN, check it out. Good acts as they went down 6-0, but they scored a bucket. So now we'll see how that looks. Great update there, A.D. Drew. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. 80.
Of course.
Fight.
Lecture.
Dismiss.
Well,